Hi, I'm just included another audio clip from Alan Jones's show. This time mainly because he's introducing the new education minister just recently appointed by Scott Morrison. That's Dan Tien. And I think it's important to hear what he's got to say regarding the reform of universities specifically. It's an area which really needs quite a bit of attention because the performance of the students from universities definitely is dropping, and there are major issues there that need to be addressed. And I think if we can't get education right in this country, then the future is doomed. It is that important. So we've got to get education back on track, restore freedom of expression at universities rather than the monoculture that has taken place now with the with groupthink and other situations. It really is a vital part of our society, and I'm hoping that Dan Tien will make some tough decisions. Although I've got to admit that my first impressions of the man are not super positive. He doesn't sound particularly dynamic, more like a wet dishcloth at this stage, but that may be unfair. He's just moved into the portfolio. Fingers crossed that he does make some good decisions and he kicks a bit of ass and cuts some funding from some of these renegade universities such as the University of Sydney, who really do need a good kick up the backside in my opinion. But anyway, make your own judgments. Here's the audio of that particular interview that took place yesterday on Tuesday. So just tell me what you think. I hope you enjoy the content. I think it's important to hear what this new minister has to say.
There's a new Federal Education Minister, Dan Tien. I say advisedly, I think this is the worst portfolio in government. This is the toughest job, and I'm quite, to be honest with you, I'm not too sure anything can be done. I think the horse is bolted. Dan Tien is a 50-year-old Victorian member of the Federal Parliament. He holds the seat of Wannon, once held by the former Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser. He has an honours degree from Melbourne University, a master's degree in Foreign Affairs and Trade from Monash University. Before he went into Parliament, he was a senior advisor to the then Deputy Prime Minister, Chief of Staff to the Small Business Minister, Deputy State Director of the Liberal Party in Victoria, and now member for this quite magnificent rural electorate of beef and dairy cattle, lamb and grain, forestry, fishing, wineries and the lot. But he's got his hands full here. He's on the line in our studio in Canberra. Dan Tien, good morning.
Morning, Alan. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very well. What do you say to parents who send their kids to a university to be bullied and brainwashed?
Well, what I would like to say to them is that we want to make sure that our universities are places where students can go and they can express their views freely.
That's
what universities have prided themselves on. And I think
but they can't. So what are you going to do about it? They can't, Dan. They can't. Bettina Arndt proved that here she was talking about the myth of rape, of the rape crisis. That is that women aren't being raped at university. So when she gets there, the corridors are filled with little left-wing taxpayer-funded so-called students to bully, to protest, to intimidate, to shout, to prevent this going ahead. And nothing is done.
Well, I spoke to Bettina yesterday, Ellen, because I wanted to get firsthand from her what she'd experienced, and she was going to send me some more information on that. I think one of the things we need to look at, because the US went through this type of intimidation a decade ago, and the University of Chicago put out a University of Chicago declaration, and I would ask your listeners to have a look at that declaration because it importantly says that all universities must not only allow freedom of speech, but also not allow anyone to obstruct or interfere with the freedoms of others to express their views. Now, that's been signed.
We know that. Spence doesn't know it. The Vice-Chancellor doesn't know it. This place is crawling alive with left-wing people. I mean, what about the University of Melbourne earlier this year? Your university, no, you were Monash, University of Melbourne.
And University of Melbourne, yes.
Well, there you are. They put on a play, Where We Stand. It was meant to celebrate 40 years of the Victorian College of the Arts dance course, which is run by the University of Melbourne. It separated the white audience from people of colour. Patrons had to sign a declaration before entering the theatre. The dance stopped when they took their seat. And the production is meant to highlight how Indigenous people and people of colour have been excluded from society and history. Taxpayers are funding it, people segregated on the basis of the colour of their skin, and the creator of the production, some 20-year-old student, said, realistically, there are simply two different shows for two different audiences. The white audience in the foyer are invited to go through a process of accepting, transitioning, cleansing, similar to a rite of passage. People of colour are invited to enter the show first, while white people must wait outside, where four dancers who introduce themselves by their preferred pronouns talk to them about white privilege. And white patrons are then asked to sign a big brown piece of paper which states, I acknowledge where I stand. And if they don't sign it, they're not allowed to enter the theatre. Melbourne University. What are you doing about it? You're funding these people.
So what we are funding our university students to do is go and get the best education possible. And that's where we've got to make sure we put the focus. We've got to make sure that what we're doing for our young students, whether they be going to preschool, primary school, secondary school or university, are equipping themselves with the skills they need to be able to get a job once they leave university, and that's where I want to bring the focus in this portfolio.
That. Look, I've got to say, I know this bloke. This is a good fella. Look, I know that. But, Dan, you're going to have to crack some whips here. This is taxpayers' money. I object to my money being... I get up early in the morning and I pay a lot of tax.
I do. Yep.
And I object to my money being used for rubbish such as this. I mean, the University of Melbourne presiding over an event where entry is based on skin colour and no one does anything about it. I mean, you've got the Ramsay Centre, the board, because it's chaired by John Howard and, of course, on Western civilisation, then suddenly, well, we've got no one prepared to embrace the course. I mean, this is what's happening in our universities. I mean, Bettina Arndt, well, she gets spat at and intimidated, but socialists can congregate and hold events. They don't have to pay for security. No, because the right wing of politics doesn't protest. They allow them to go ahead. Who is going to stop this rubbish from going on? It's everywhere.
Yes, well, Alan, I'll be meeting with the group of 8 Vice-Chancellors on Thursday night, and this is one of the things that I would like to discuss with them about what is being done to make sure that not only is there freedom of speech, but there is also the ability for people not to face obstruction or to have their events interfered with, and so they're not faced with large security bills, as you've pointed out. So this is something that obviously needs to be addressed.
You've got the one thing they want more than anything else. You've got money. And why should my money, the listeners' money? There are many people listening to you who'll never get inside a university gate. And they are being taxed billions of dollars to pay for this rubbish. You've got another left-wing academic at Sydney University, Dr. Fiona Martin. She showed her media class the 2016 cartoon drawn by Bill Leak, which highlighted the serious issue of Indigenous youth crime. She told the class, and I quote, "This vile cartoon here by Bill Leak, may he rest not in peace." And she told her 18-year-old media students to use web tools that don't store data. She told her students, and I quote, "If you're planning to commit suicide or murder one of your lecturers, I really recommend looking at these tools." This is a lunatic teaching our kids.
So, look, obviously we want all lecturers, all teachers teaching with respect, making sure that the views that they express are done so in a way where we respect others. That should just be common sense, and that's something...
But we know that. It's not happening. Now listen, let me tell you what's happening. There's an outfit called the Social Alternative. They're running wild on campus. See, why I'm saying this to you is we have everybody, you haven't, but everyone stand at Birmingham, the predecessor was useless. That bloke, I wouldn't feed him. That South Australian senator who was the education minister, he didn't have a clue. They tell him, we've got a wonderful university system. Have we? Members of the Social Alternative Club, Sydney University and elsewhere, are allowed to address the lecture theatre before a lecture begins, and they give notices for rallies against the Ramsay Centre, rallies against John Howard, rallies against Tony Abbott. And a 21-year-old who's designated as the University of Sydney's women's officer, who describes herself as a communist and runs these on-campus queer spaces and women's rooms, says, "I would say that queer and ethno spaces are vital because society is racist and homophobic." She said, sometimes you sit in a 3-hour seminar and a white bro has mansplained a concept and you just need to be with other women. This is going on in the lecture theatres of universities. I had a letter from a young student attending university in Brisbane who participates in debating. And he tells me that at every single debate, this is the University of Queensland, the entire room has to go around and tell everyone else what their preferred pronoun is. In other words, you're not going to man or a woman. What pronoun do you want to be referred to? And there are 2 grievance officers to whom you can report any violations. This is university life.
Yes, and Alan, what we need to be doing is making sure that our students are actually studying, getting good results and setting themselves up for when they have to go and get work. And that's what we need to get the focus back on. And
but
that's
don't we need a minister who's going to crack some heads?
Well, Alan, I'm very new in the portfolio. Obviously, I've got to look at these issues. I've got to see what we can do. Universities have code of conducts, which they're meant to abide by. I want to examine those and have a look at what's in those, whether there's anything we can do that way. Obviously, we do want to get the focus back on people getting degrees and setting this nation up for the future.
It's not just university. I mean, at schools, we've now had this headlines this week about more changes to the national curriculum, and students are going to be taught mindfulness and gratitude and resilience. And the former director of the curriculum at the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority, Fiona Muller, said the work underway is an attempt to redesign the curriculum by stealth. And she said there's a radical shift going on in teaching and learning. The current curriculum is only 2 years old and now it's going to be changed again. And teachers are going to be trained to deal with general capabilities such as intercultural understanding and ethnic understanding. I mean, can someone teach maths and English and history and geography?
So, Alan, there was a statement put out yesterday clarifying that there isn't a review underway. And can I say from a federal government point of view that when it comes to the curriculum, reading, writing and arithmetic, while I'm the minister, will be the basis of the curriculum. That
okay,
will
but
be
you've got to make sure
foundation.
that is happening, Dan. See, employers this week have told us about low literacy and numeracy abilities of job seekers. The Australian Industry Group conducted a survey of 298 companies with a total of 112,000 employees across manufacturing, construction, mining and service industries. 99% of them reported low levels of literacy and numeracy. And the Australian Industry Group head, Ines Willock, said widespread issues with workplace literacy and numeracy are leading to critical errors on workplace documents and general communication problems which negatively impact on productivity and teamwork. Now, we're throwing truckloads of money at education and we're just disappearing in terms of world rankings. We don't cut the mustard.
Well, it's true that we've got to make sure that the record levels of money we're putting into education leads to results, leads to student outcomes, which will benefit this nation. As when you look at the OECD on those issues, especially about getting labour market outcomes, we're actually ranked 5th of the 35 OECD countries based on the latest report. But there's still a lot more to do. And you're right. What we've got to do is get away from the debate around money, getting focused on what are the results and outcomes we're getting for students. And that's,
outcomes,
for instance...
outcomes, hang on, you've got building respectful relationships in Victoria under Daniel Andrews. Teachers give Year 9 students, 15-year-olds, character cards, and one 15-year-old can play Megan. She works at a local cafe. She's had 15 sexual partners, describes herself as bisexual, and some parents' 15-year-old daughter has got to role play Megan. I mean, do you speak to Daniel Andrews about building respectful relationships and say, well, I'm sorry, while that's on, you don't get money? Dan, we're beaten for time, but we must talk again, and the public have got to hear what you're going to do about all this. Do you mind?
No, that's fine, Alan. As you know, any time happy to come on.
I appreciate your time. Thank you, Dan. There is the new Federal Education Minister, Dan Tien. It's a mess, isn't it?
Please consider subscribing to my channel if you think there's anything there of use to you or entertainment or whatever. And either do that or give me a thumbs up, or if you're feeling really energetic, do both. That'd be great. But please don't ignore me. That's the worst thing you can do on YouTube, is be ignored.